Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about things that make me upset. So let's get into it. So I got a question here, Frederick. What if you see a junior write code? What makes you upset? Like what makes you mad? Basically, I don't. It's very rare that I get mad. I'm pretty mellow usually. I'd like to think anyway. But if I do get upset or mad or whatever we're gonna call it when it comes to code, because I have emotional days, I'm very emotional about my software sometimes. This is actually not just like, I don't like the focus. I don't like us to have the focus on a junior, because this is not just it's not just juniors should do this sort of thing. It's also more experienced programmers who, for various reasons, and it's not like you don't get it. I do understand it. It's just that it's not fun to be on the receiving end of things, and that's where I think that there's a fair bit of empathy is needed in order to understand someone when you're writing software. Because this is something that juniors do. Juniors do this actually, I would say, quite often. At least when they're in the philosophy age or philosophy stage, where they will judge another person's code, and they will say, "Oh, this is bullshit. Why aren't they doing this and that and so forth?" And they usually do this because they don't actually understand the whole story as to why this code was shit in the first place. Because the first thing that you should think is, instead of like blaming the person, "Oh, this is really shitty. This is like why." This is like they're just bad at programming, right? The first thing you should ask is, okay, what were the circumstances that created this situation? That's the first thing you should ask. If you see really shitty code, you should think about, I wonder if they did this. If you have experience, you will know what most likely caused this. It can be they were stressed, there was a deadline, you know that, all right, they were needed to hack this shit together, because if they didn't, they would have to refactor all of this, and they probably didn't get that through their PO, etc., etc. So having that empathy, I think, is important. But even like I sometimes I just fall prey to this as well. And the thing that I do hate the most is when I see somebody make a really bad tech decision. Like this is the thing that upsets me the most. I've talked in the past about sloppy work, and I absolutely think that sloppy work is something it is annoying to me to see. If we're talking about just juniors, sloppy work and bad decisions are very different things. Sloppy work is that you copy paste code, or you don't, I can very clearly see that you haven't named the variables correctly or structured things. It might be that you found some section of the code that was kind of doing the thing that you wanted. You didn't really understand it. You just copy pasted it in, and it kind of worked. But I can see that there are very obvious bugs. If I can just look at your code and see, these things. Why are you doing this, that, and that? When anybody can spot that at a glance, then this is that's sloppy code. But a bad tech decision is a different thing. A bad tech decision is the sort of decision that kind of leads to the thing that I was talking about, and that is when you create a situation where future work has now been impacted because of your decision. An example would be, let's take a few extreme cases. Let's say that you have an all JavaScript stack, and you just arbitrarily decide, hey, you know what, we are going to use CoffeeScript. And then you start you spend a day or something, or whatever, to actually introduce CoffeeScript into your build pipeline. And then you start writing a feature in CoffeeScript. Now, this is this is the sort of thing that I'm talking about. Now, unless you have a really good fucking explanation to me as to why you're doing this, then you're basically just causing this exact problem. You've literally done the absolute worst thing. I'm not saying that CoffeeScript is necessarily the worst thing. I'm saying that that sort of decision, we can take it to the server as well. The equivalent would be that you're working in a Java stack, and all of a sudden you decide that, all right, you know what, this is really shitty, we should use Golang instead. And then you start writing a part of the system in Go, just arbitrarily. You have no idea how much you just fucked up that project. There is, you cannot, if you don't get what you just did, then then you and me, we will not be friends until you understand what the hell you're doing. Because that sort of decision, making an arbitrary decision like that, will has more impact on the company than you can possibly imagine, it seems. And that's the sort of thing that makes me truly, deeply angry. I do get this anger quite often. I will admit that I usually get angry or upset, mad, whatever, in front-end. It happens more in front-end than it happens in back-end development, mostly because of this trend of adding libraries, because adding a library usually entails that this happens. You introduce new concepts so frequently that at some point these different dependencies and libraries, they actually come back to bite you, especially when you want to make a major update of a version of something like that or something like that. That makes it quite often that you see that, oh yeah, now these libraries are incompatible with our way of working, and the only way to fix it is if you cross your fingers, maybe you can throw them away and still make it work, which now nullifies the whole reason as to why you had that dependency in the first place. Because that little fucker over there who decided to make a slider using a library when, just a little bit of investment, they could build that themselves. Oh, they could fucking just come over to me and I will build them the fucking slider. No, we're going to use a library, and that library now is going to be used everywhere. And then whenever we want to make an update and this breaks, that basically means that we have to we have to rewrite it, or we have to figure out some way of compromising the decision we want to make today because of that dependency, because we might not have time to change it. We might not have time to refactor it or fix it or whatever. And then we need to, that's exactly the sort of thing. Now you're in a corner. You've been backed into a corner because of that technical decision. So now you have to make a shitty decision today because somebody made a shitty decision a month ago or 2 months. And the thing that really bothers me is when I can very clearly see that there was a very easy other solution to do here. It's something else you could do. And for some reason, they didn't make it. They don't understand the impact of that action. It's just baffling to me because, I mean, think about it. You may have saved, I did have this situation not that long ago, and the total time cost of using that library was what? 1 hour, 2 hours? Let's call it 5 hours to go to the extreme. We're talking about a very simple concept here. And that's the time save at that point in time. The outcome was that after adding that in, and due to that dependency, later down the line, a few months, Mr. Sorry Fucker, is going to have to do to update all of these dependencies, has to spend quite a lot more time. I think I've spent more than double that time to just make all of these things work together and be compatible. And that's the sort of thing that really ticks me off. It really, really, really ticks me off because I think that why it's such an emotional thing for me is because this is the thing. And I don't know when I realized this. I suppose I started realizing when I could draw the connection between how big enterprise, very slow working enterprise corporations, how they work, and the difference between them and working at a smaller company. And this is what I realized. I realized that these sorts of decisions are the things that lead to having a big fat monolithic, or it doesn't have to be a monolith, but a big fat system that is extremely slow moving, that can basically not, like where you can barely progress, where you are as a company pretty much dependent on that you have all of these developers who just kind of learns how to maneuver through the mess. Like the system isn't nice. There is like no way that you can just have someone sit down without any coaching or anything like that and kind of just figure out how things work and be productive, because that's just not possible. You literally have to do trial and error with a lot of like flakiness in testing, and you need to basically do quite a lot of manual testing. You have all this overhead process and insecurity in every release. You slow your entire system down because you have all these deviations, and the more deviations and legacy you have, the harder it becomes to move anywhere. Every story takes longer because you need to have more stuff in your head all the time. And you get to this point due to these sorts of decisions where it's like a wheel that is spinning through mud. You're not going to notice it the first time you go through. And maybe not the second time, but the third time, you're going to see a slight decrease in rotation. And the more mud you add, the slower this wheel is going to spin. That's exactly the sensation I get when I see these sorts of decisions. And it makes me really angry when I can see that this thing here, you didn't have to do it this way. Why did you? Then you of course need to be have a bit of empathy to try to figure, as I said, then you need to take a breath, go back and think, okay, what led to this situation? That is my personal ambition. That is the thing that I'm trying to work on as much as I can humanly possibly do when I make tech decisions. If you want to, I'll give you a glimpse into this. I'm still trying to do this as much as I can. I try to focus, when I make tech decisions that are bigger than, hey, this story, I really try to think. I try to understand my fellow programmers and think, all right, if I do it this way, what is likely going to be the outcome of this? What's the next person going to do if I do this? If I add this library or that dependency, is it likely that the next person who touches this, if it's a junior, if it's someone, whoever, right? Are they going to fuck this up? Or are they going to get like the intention behind this, to really like to have that even further perspective? It's not now just about, oh, this is a good thing or a bad thing for the project from a technical perspective. It's a good thing or a bad thing from comprehension, from future work, that sort of thing. And I think that is the true challenge of writing really high level, like really high standards of software and tooling and so forth. If you want an example, you can look at open source libraries. That's exactly the sort of problem that they face, such as say jQuery or like different libraries where they literally have to think about not just that the problem that they are solving are being solved, but also how it's being solved so that it feels approachable to people and that they use it in the correct manner so they actually get, it's kind of like keeping your kids from playing with fire. Like you need to help them understand how to do this without burning themselves. So that's pretty much it. What I want you to take away from this is basically that bad technical decisions are the things that truly make me upset. And it doesn't matter if it's a junior or a senior. Anybody can make bad technical decisions and not think about what's going to happen after they make that implementation. Have a great day.